This episode of The Edge is brought to you by Audible.com, offering more than 180,000 titles for smartphone, tablet, and desktop. To get a free audiobook of your choice and help Trek.fm at the same time, visit audibletrial.com/trekfm. And also by Enterprise in Space, an international program of the nonprofit National Space Society. Find out how you can help science and education and become a virtual crew member aboard the NSS Enterprise Orbiter by visiting enterpriseinspace.org. And if you want to join the conversation and share your thoughts on this episode, join the Babel Conference, our listeners group on Facebook. Just type BABEL into the Facebook search field. We look forward to seeing you there.
You're listening to Trek FM.
What have you done out there on the edge of Federation space?
Hello and welcome to Tracks from the Edge, Trek FM's podcast in which we provide audio commentaries for every single episode of Star Trek Discovery, mere days after the episodes themselves drop. I'm Mike.
And I'm Max.
And we are back from the break to talk about Chapter 1 in Chapter 2 of Season 1 of Star Trek Discovery, Despite Yourself, also known as Episode 10.
Yeah, that's easy to remember.
Yeah, it all makes sense. It all makes sense. You know, it's easier to keep straight than timelines and mirror universes and all that good stuff. Yeah. So yeah, we're going to talk. Apparently, yeah, we're going to talk about this episode. The internet has some opinions about this episode. That's for sure.
What?
Yes, I know. But even by the internet standards, the internet has opinions about this episode. So let's just dive right into it. We're going to pause the episode right after what for us is the CBS All Access logo. If you're in other places around the world, that would probably be the Netflix logo. If you're in Canada, that might be the Crave logo. And we're going to give a countdown and start it up. If you're not watching the episode with us, that's perfectly fine. Presuming that you've seen it before, you can probably pick up on what we're talking about most of the time, and it won't matter. Yep. So, Max, are you ready?
Oh, so ready to press play. I was born ready to press play on stuff.
All right. Then we will press play in 3, 2, 1, start. And previously on Star Trek Discovery, there's this ship and it's spinning.
Spinny disc thing.
And
somebody loading a glowing goo.
Yep. And that shot, that really, really cool shot where they jump in and take care of those Klingons. Yeah. Anyway, this recap, you can tell, is very much designed for people who maybe haven't watched the show or maybe haven't obsessed over the show the way that most Trek FM hosts and listeners have, and have been thinking about it for the past 2 months. It's much more sort of an overall recap than what happened in the very last episode. So yeah, we're sort of getting the whole shebang here.
Yep.
And
Good
there you
stuff.
see the little double ship coming back together, and now what's going on? Where are we?
They're in the mirror universe. They hinted this pretty hard earlier on in the show. Lorca's like we could go anywhere with this thing, even multiple universes. And Stamets is like, yeah, that's cool. We should do that. And then, he's like, oh, where are we? And I was like, yeah, they're totally in the mirror universe.
See, this is what I love about you, Max, is, you're so completely out of touch with everything outside of the show. And I don't mean that you're only interested in the show and you have no life outside of the show. What I mean is, you come in and you watch episodes of Discovery, And then you're like, okay, I'll be back next week. But it's not like you're online reading, Trek Core or anything like that and picking up on all the little details. Because if you were, you would know that a few months back, Jonathan Frakes was at a convention and people were like, hey, you directed an episode of Discovery. What's that like? And he's like, oh, man, they're doing some really cool stuff on that show. They're doing some crazy things. They go to the mirror universe. And
yeah.
And then everyone is like, okay, well, then there you go. So they're going to the mirror universe. So everyone else knew about this, And then something that someone pointed out, which I remember when this happened, but I remember like people basically ignoring it as whatever, some sort of weird anomaly. But they did this like massive photo shoot, which appeared in Entertainment Weekly like a month or so before the show started. And in one shot in the background, you can see the dedication plaque on the bridge, and it says ISS Discovery. And now we know why.
Well, like really super early on, like I was watching the show, and like Lorca's all like dedicated to winning the war, and I was like, are they gonna like play Mirror Universe stuff in the backstory here? Because like he doesn't seem like he's in the same Starfleet that we're familiar with.
I mean, there's a lot of theories that's the case. I don't necessarily think that's.
No, I don't think so either. But like I was just wondering, like, if they were going to invoke the Mirror Universe, and if so, how they would do it. And like, this is not the way I thought that they would do it, because this kind of feels like. It kind of feels like just a complication. Like everything like was going in a direction, and then inexplicably, like they're totally derailed by this mirror universe trip, and it seems like it's kind of a big deal. And I find that very strange.
You know what it's similar to? Well, a couple things. One, two things. One thing is season 1 of 24, where I feel like they were going in a direction, but they really didn't know what they were doing. Overall, they said like we didn't have it planned out past the pilot or whatever. So they basically concluded their storyline, which they were saying was going to take 24 hours. They concluded it in like episode 13, and then they needed to come up with like a second storyline in order to fill out the remaining 11 episodes. It kind of feels like that, but it also kind of feels like season 3 of Enterprise, where they finished their big war storyline, and then they're like, let's head home, and then they end up in 1940s alternate reality Earth with alien Nazis and stuff like that. Remember that?
Well, that was like how season 4 opened.
Right. Well, it was like the cliffhanger, the season 3 cliffhanger. It's like, where are we?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think this is a little bit weirder than that, because in this, like this is more like if like Deep Space Nine's like last season was running, and like they like all the pieces are in place for like the final battle with Dominion. And like then they get into the Defiant, and they go, oh no, we're in the Mirror Universe. What are we going to do now? And then they spend like 3 episodes trying to get out of the Mirror Universe so they can get back and end the war. That's literally what's happened here.
But I'm wondering, like, well, it'll be interesting to see what other implications there are here, because the thing that they did in the last episode in order to win the war was basically figure out how to break the cloak, right?
Yep.
And we know that they don't have that technology 10 years from now, so how's that going to work? I mean, I guess Klingons could be like, fine, we fixed it, so that you can't do that anymore. But
I think it's pretty obvious that like whatever they've come up with like does not change anything in the long term, and by long term, I guess we mean a decade.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But like, that's sort of the problem with the episodes prior to this, where like they've got this mission to like get this antenna and get like data from this antenna so that they can then break the Klingon technology's cloaking device. Like they're doing a lot of stuff in order to accomplish these tasks, but like they're very sort of vaguely defined. Like, yeah, we need to get information so we can break the cloak, so let's break the cloak. And like I know I watched that episode where Saru went bananas, and I was like, I'm taking it on your word that this matters. I'm going on the word of the characters that what they're doing here means something, and I don't 100% buy it. And literally knowing the future, I definitely don't buy it. So that's kind of an issue. And in this episode, they're derailed, and I'm like, okay, well, yeah, of course they're derailed. It doesn't work out. I don't know how they managed to completely fail to break the Klingon technology's cloak if they have exactly what they need to do so. Maybe they're stuck in the mirror universe for several seasons. I don't know. If Star Trek Discovery is a show set primarily in the mirror universe, that would be fine.
Yeah, I would be down with that. And I mean, that's a question which I have because, I don't know, growing up, Mirror Mirror was always one of my favorite episodes. And, it was one of those things where it's like, it's fun to see this alternate thing. And back when I was just watching Star Trek and not trying to really analyze it or find the detail or the deeper meaning or trying to justify my opinions on things or anything like that. I was just like, I like Mirror Mirror because it's weird and crazy and cool, and you get to see Spock with a goatee. And, in recent years, I've discovered that there are a lot of people who don't like the Mirror Universe at all. And they're
Sure.
very much against, stories set in that universe just because they think that it's kind of pointless. I mean, where do you fall? Because I was always under the impression, and maybe I was just projecting, and you never stated your opinion, but where do you fall in terms of the Mirror Universe on the whole?
I don't know. I don't really know if I have like a perspective on like good/bad. But because the Mirror Universe is part of Star Trek continuity, I can't like erase it. And it played such a big role in Deep Space Nine. And big is relative. It didn't really play that big of a role, but I mean, like it was much more significant there.
Detour, but
yeah, but like there was enough there to like really establish like you can't completely ignore it. It's there, like you have to deal with that. And I have found that I think about it a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I have run through like various thought processes. I have been in the car driving somewhere, and I turn to the person I'm driving with and go, "Is there a mirror Q?"
Yeah. I mean, it is a fascinating concept.
Or is there one Q? I really think about it. I think about it a lot. I go into like detail about it, and I'm like, if there's a mirror Q, then that kind of implies that Q isn't powerful enough to exist in both places, which kind of seems weird. But if Q is powerful enough to exist in both universes, then like, why does he like think anything of humans if like a quirk of history can turn them into monsters? Like obviously, like there's a lot going on there. So I think about it a lot. I'm very fascinated by the concept, and I both wish that they would explore it in great detail and explain everything, and I'm terrified that they might someday do that.
I mean, it's one of those things where for the longest time, when people would say like, "What is it that you like about it?" and I had to actually sit down and think about it, and the thing that I came up with, the reason why I respond to it, I think, is because, yes, it is fun seeing these alternate, evil versions of these characters, and the criticism would always be like, well, what more is there to it than that? And I think the more there is to it than that is that by seeing these, dark reflections of these characters that we love, we then reevaluate who they are as people in the Prime universe. Essentially, it enhances the real characters' qualities, and by doing that, it really sort of makes you appreciate not the mirror universe characters, but the Prime characters more. Like that is sort of like my go-to explanation for why I like the mirror universe. But watching this episode, and maybe it just has to do with the times that we're living in now. But I clearly think, and this is why I think like having an extended storyline in the mirror universe is kind of a cool idea. Like, Star Trek is always about the time that we're living in, right? And when Tilly starts describing what the mirror universe is to Lorca and Saru, I'm like, oh, this is a commentary on America right now in the 21st century, right? I mean, she's like, it's a fascistic, is that how you pronounce it? A fascistic state, in which Terrans isolate themselves from everyone else and consider every other species to be lesser than them and everything like that. And then she says, the line which really kind of just like stabs you in the gut like she does with Connor later in the episode, spoilers, is when she says it's completely the opposite of what, humans are in our, timeline or whatever. And it's like, oh God, and thinking about it that way, it's like, wow, yeah, no, it totally makes sense to do the mirror universe, in Star Trek today, because it is a reflection of us, and it questions like, are we on the wrong side of the mirror? Maybe we should take a look at that some more and see what's going on there. So yeah, I
definitely find the Enterprise intro frustrating because it establishes that the mirror universe stretches back before our time. Yeah. Which I find very annoying because it seems so obvious to me that our current present-day world is headed more towards a mirror universe kind of context. And I would really appreciate that.
It also, and I guess this goes into exactly what it was the original intentions were or whatever, but, looking at the sort of the long game and everything with Star Trek, it's like showing it before our time makes it less effective as a cautionary tale, So, but that's okay, whatever,
But that's Enterprise in season 4. It's not a cautionary tale. It's okay. Isn't the mirror universe great?
But hey, I totally agree. Like, that's my favorite episode of Enterprise, and I love season 4 of Enterprise so much, but, that's okay. Anyway, so, whoa, something just happened on screen. This is rather important, I would imagine.
Yeah, she totally hypnotized that dude and made him talk Klingon weird, right?
Yeah. Now, I love the way that this scene plays out because there's that whole thing where they're like extremely close, like he's got her by the neck and she's like kind of freaking out, as one would, and then just like on a dime, she's just like. It's almost like the Emperor in episode 3, where she kind of like gives this little look and then just starts saying this prayer, and it's like boom, and the way that Mary Chieffo plays it and the way that it's directed is, I think, really really effective and pretty cool.
I don't get your Star Wars reference. I saw that movie once.
Okay, I know that you've seen it twice because I've watched it twice with you myself. But that's
really,
okay.
I don't remember the scene you're talking about then.
Okay, it doesn't matter. Yeah, okay. So I guess that really kind of seals the deal on Ash and Voq. But
yeah, Ash and Voq know each other totally. It's like there's no question about it now.
But it is starting to kind of clarify, I guess, like what the specifics of it are, and of course, in that scene you're watching it and you're like, oh, this is the Manchurian Candidate for sure, and
they even use the word Manchurian to
Manchurian, yeah,
talk about brainwashing techniques.
I've never read the book, but I have seen the movie and the
Which
other
one?
movie.
Oh, both of them?
Both of them, yeah. But yes, if anyone out there has not seen The Manchurian Candidate, the original, the John Frankenheimer movie in particular, I highly, highly, highly recommend it, and I'm guessing you do too, right?
Oh, yeah. Totally. You got to watch it. It's required viewing, if for no other reason than you'll get it when people talk about The Manchurian Candidate as a reference.
Yeah, also you'll understand where like half the episodes of Star Trek came from. You'll be like, oh, that's where the end of Star Trek 6 came from. Oh, that's where that episode where Geordi gets captured by the Romulans comes from, all that stuff. So definitely check it out. It's fantastic. So, okay. So here we have... Ash Tyler freaking out as one would.
Yeah.
His performance in this is really, really good too, and it really kind of like the way that the story is structured and it being sort of like at least the storyline being very much Tyler's story, obviously kind of leads to some things later on which are very effective too. But yeah. We haven't mentioned that, this episode is directed by Jonathan Frakes, which is kind of awesome. I mean, when his name came up on screen, there was just something about that which really struck me, like not just like on a nostalgic point of view, like the idea like Jonathan Frakes is directing Star Trek, and he was the director of, some of my favorite episodes and movies, back when I was a kid or anything like that, but also just the idea that, like, what this franchise is, not just, to us fans, but to the people involved with it. Like, Jonathan Frakes was an actor on this show, and knowing that acting is, something which is not forever, he used the show to develop another career and became an even better director than he is an actor. And now, 25 years later or whatever it is, he comes back home in a sense and is contributing to, the show, which is, I think, considered by many to be like the best directed in the franchise. And I don't know, there's just something beautifully poetic about that. I love it.
Well, I certainly, like the idea that, there's a, like, it's a business, but like it's a business that has community. That's good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
There's a lot of Tilly in this episode, which I'm in favor of.
Oh, yeah. I mean, this, I think, kind of seals the deal that she is the best character, right? I mean, come on.
I mean, she was my favorite really early on. And then they get here, and I'm like, yep, I chose wisely.
She's the best, and Mary Wiseman is such a good actress. Her performance is fantastic in this. So here's where Burnham is explaining that this is the mirror universe. And here's a weird thing, though, something which I never picked up on. Like, they keep on talking about, like, we're Terrans. This is the Terran Empire. Like, I just kind of always thought, like, well, I mean, they say it in, like, Star Trek V and stuff like that. I thought that, like, Terran was just kind of like the name that you used for humans, because you've got Vulcans who are from Vulcan, and Romulans who are from Romulus, and Klingons who are from Klingonness. Okay,
Kronos?
Maybe that one doesn't work. But the idea that, like, okay, well, Earth, Terra, we're Terrans.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the Vulcans aren't calling us humans, they're calling us Terrans because, humanity, humans, whatever, that just has a more universal tag. And in this, I don't know, that was just what I kind of, what do I know?
Where are you going with this?
But I was surprised that they're like, we're not humans anymore, we're Terrans. Like, Terran is like a mirror universe thing, and I never really thought of it that way. Like, I thought, like, the reason why it's called the Terran Empire is because it's so, human-centric. You know?
I think, I think that's true. And I think the reason she says we're not humans anymore but Terrans, it's just like the parlance. Like, you don't want to use like the wrong word, even though it's not technically incorrect. It's not what they say. It's not how they talk about each other.
It's like that scene from Inglourious Bastards where he puts the 3 fingers up in the wrong way.
Yeah, whatever, man. It's exactly like that scene in that whatever.
Oh, so we just missed the reveal of Captain Tilly. And I have to say, when I saw that on screen, I was just like, oh, snap. It's great. Which is, you get those moments all the time in Mirror Universe episodes, and I love them,
Yeah. Yeah. She straightens her hair every day, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah. They talk about that on After Trek. But
really, because like my wife has naturally curly hair, but she has it straightened like every like year or something, and like she still routinely has to use a thing on her hair. I don't know hair stuff, but like when like she showed up with straight hair, my wife was like whoa, that's weird. and like we had a brief conversation about how complicated that must be for a Mirror Universe captain to keep up appearances. It's got to be pretty frustrating.
I think in the Mirror Universe, they take they're really big in terms of their style and their fashion.
Yeah, and
it's not so much about practicality; it's more about the blend.
Yeah, and it's the future. I mean, maybe like the Mirror Universe has like exceptional like styling technology. Like
oh yeah,
follicular nanites.
There you go. Follicular nanites. That's
follicular, like for follicles.
Right. Yeah. Okay. I got you. Follicular. All right.
Yeah,
this is a great scene.
She's cool.
Mm-hmm. And he makes her get out of the chair right away, but he never sits in his chair. I mean, I guess he does sit in it in a minute here, but that seems a little greedy. That's kind of a power play on his part. Like, get out of my chair.
Lorca in general, I don't like. There are plenty of times where like somebody who is like arguably a bad guy or like not to be trusted, or maybe like a good guy with the wrong ideas who's kind of been corrupted by his own like urge to do good, kind of Anakin Skywalker-y, like where like there's a part of you that still kind of likes him. I don't like Lorca at all. Like I genuinely do not like him. I see him at the end of the episode in the Agonizer, and I'm like, it's got to be rough for him.
Not to cut you off, but I just want to talk about this sequence because this is one of my favorite sequences in the movie because structurally and in terms of pacing and everything else, the editing, everything, it is almost beat for beat exactly like the scene in Bring It On where they decide to create their own dance routine to perform or cheer routine to perform in the finals. And they basically go all in and dedicate themselves to winning this championship. And I've got to think that was intentional because otherwise, how is it that coincidental? I don't know.
You heard it here first, folks. Mike's favorite part of this episode is the part that reminds him of Bring It On.
To be fair, my favorite part of anything is the part that reminds me of Bring It On. You can apply that to all facets of life because Bring It On is a masterpiece. So there you go. Anyway, yeah, but Lorca, I don't know. See, I don't necessarily agree with you in that regard. Like, Lorca, like, he does so many things which are despicable that I hate him, but then he'll do like one little thing where it's like, that was kind of nice, or, oh, that was a selfless act. And I'm like, am I wrong? Is he maybe not that terrible? And then I think about it and I'm like, no, he's just, your typical manipulator who, does these terrible things, then tries to get you to believe that he's a good guy so that you come back and then does more terrible things. So, I mean, that's kind of how I saw like the end of the episode, because, there's that moment where she's like, no, you're not putting him in there. And then I didn't even pick up on this the first time I watched it, but, he gives her this look like, no, you got to do this, because he has that whole speech on the transporter pad where he's like, we need to do whatever it takes. Mm-hmm. And then she's like, okay, throw him in the agonizer. And then, like that moment is like, oh, see, he really is a good guy. He's willing to go in that agonizer booth in order to help get them home. But then you think like, oh, well, it certainly looks like he brought them here in the first place. So you know what? Maybe he's not that great of a guy. He's just willing to go to extremes in order to get what he wants. So
yep, he's committed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't like him.
Yeah. So yeah, he's a jerk.
Yeah,
but
what are you gonna do? That's just how it goes.
Yes.
So
who is this emperor?
They did the suiting up montage, and now they're in the Mirror Universe, and they're all getting ready to hang out with Mirror Universe folks.
Yeah, and they're talking about the Emperor, the faceless Emperor. And I'm shocked that we didn't see the Emperor at the end of this episode, but I mean, if I were a betting man, I would definitely go to Vegas right now and put my money on the Emperor being Giorgio, right? I mean, it's gotta be. Who else could it be?
I don't know. Are we going to actually see the Emperor? I don't know. I mean,
I think we will, Otherwise, why would they make a big deal out of the Emperor being faceless?
I don't know. I think my feeling is like they had to explain why it's an empire, because they've mentioned it like before a number of times in the history of the show, and it's like, okay, there's an empire, which means there's an emperor. We never see the emperor.
We do in Enterprise. It's Hoshi Sato, right?
Oh yeah, we do. That's dumb.
It's gonna be Giorgio. I'm 99.9% positive on that. That's my guess, but whatever. I mean, I think it's fairly well established we're going to see Giorgio later in the series and everything. So, I mean, but even if it weren't, I'd be like, yeah, we're going to see Giorgio. We gotta. I mean, it really is interesting. In the way that this is such a serialized show and everything, and there was so much planning involved that as the show progresses, you really kind of start to see some of the choices that they made behind the scenes. They make a lot more sense now. Like everyone was like, the Shenzhou, that's going to play a huge role, because look at these massive sets that they built for this thing, and then it blows up in episode 2 or whatever, or is abandoned, or whatever it was that happened, and people are like, well, what? Wow, they're really committing. They spent all that money on that set, and then they're going to use it in like 2 episodes, and now, like you see here, like, yeah, we're seeing this stuff again, and on the After Trek show, they were talking about how the original plan was to go to the Mirror Universe in episode 4, but then they realized that you can't really do mirror universe versions of characters before you establish them in the real world. Otherwise, there's no point. So they pushed it back. But obviously, with the planning that early on, there was obviously sort of like, the thought that like, hey, we're going to be reusing these sets, even if it's not for another like month or so. We can justify the expense. And make 2 bridges and all that stuff and get away with it looking all cool and everything. So I think that's cool. I like that.
Sure, yeah. I mean, it's good when they, explore new spaces. It's kind of a bummer that all bridges look the same.
Yeah. These beds don't seem to be very well designed. Look at how much he's hanging off the bottom of that thing.
That's me on any bed.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is certainly a theory which has been going around. We even had last week's episode of The Edge named after it, but the idea that Stamets has some Gary Mitchellitis, going on here. And, there seems to be some reinforcement of that idea, the way that he, flings Culver across the room and everything like that earlier in this episode. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know. I could see it. Oh, and this line right here, I'd say I'm 60% excited, 40% terrified. Maybe it's the other way around. Like, am I not mistaken? Like, this is like straight up, like word for word, almost lifted from Armageddon, isn't it? When Owen Wilson is talking, when they're getting ready for the mission.
Yeah, actually, that does sound right.
I mean, if you're going to steal from the best, right? I mean,
that's right. Michael
the old
Bay
adage. Hey, even you talk about how much the beginning of Armageddon is awesome until they get into space. And
I agree, but I'm not crazy enough to say Michael Bay is the best.
Okay, all right.
The internet's going to have an issue with those words. Oh, the internet. Yeah, I do frequently find myself wanting things to be funnier, and basically Tilly in the Mirror Universe is exactly what I would like. More nervous energy in the face of terrible circumstances. There's not enough of that in Star Trek. There's way too much like onto the breach. Way too much like whatever it takes kind of psychology. And Barclay and Tilly, these are more realistic characters. They're characters who get nervous and don't want to be imperiled or embarrassed. They want to be protected, and I find that much more relatable and believable at times.
But then I also love how, like in this scene, she like steps up. She's not. When it's game time, she succeeds. I think that's really cool and kind of like speaks to her character and her ambition. Overall.
Well, yeah, I mean, she has to be able to do it. If she completely fails, the show's over.
Well, yeah, no, I know, but I mean, it's not like she's got that nervous energy here. Like, she just like turns it on. When as soon as she walks out of that door, like even before, like they're communicating, she's not like, okay, can you open the channel now? She's like, open the channel, and then sits down, all that stuff. I mean, see, like this scene, like where Lorca is like banging his head, I'm like, that makes me like him. But whatever. So this guy Connor, right? I mean, we saw him in the first couple episodes. He's the guy who like has the concussion and walks down to the brig when Burnham is in there, and she's like, "You got to get to sick bay," and then like the thing blows up and he gets sucked out into space, and that was like one of the first big like shocking deaths on this show because in all of the press and everything they were like, "We've got this guy, who's going to be on the show," blah blah blah. Like he was one of the first cast members they announced, and the fact that he was someone who basically had never been in anything before, and they were announcing him along with people like Michelle Yeoh and Doug Jones really made it seem like, oh, well, he's going to be a big part of the show. And then they kill him in episode 2. I mean, like literally before the show aired, like I went to a convention and he was there, right? Up on stage with like Wilson Cruz and other people. Then he just dies. And so seeing him here, it's like, hey, that's great. And as soon as I saw him, I'm like, are they going to kill him again? Is that going to be his thing? Is he like their version of like the Ferengi in the Mirror Universe where it's like, they kill one every episode? Like every time Connor comes on an episode of Discovery, he's going to die. And then they do. And I'm like, oh, that's funny. I've got to think that was intentional, right? But whatever. So this is the scene.
Kenny.
Yeah, there you go. So this is the scene here, which has everyone talking, and I mean, I was completely taken by surprise by it, and watching it like the second time, I think I realized why I was so taken by surprise with it, which is the way that it's constructed is kind of brilliant. We're not following Culber's story. We're following Tyler's. This is Tyler's scene, and then when he kills Culber, it's shocking because we're not thinking about Culber. We're thinking about Tyler and his peril. And I don't know. I don't know what your reaction was, but talking to everyone else, it seems like my reaction and my wife's reaction was exactly the same as everyone else, which was like, no, like literally, like my wife was like on the couch screaming at the TV, like, how could they do that? That's like outrage, like literal outrage at this TV show. And my first thought was like, oh, like it was that sort of like, boy, no one is safe. Like, that's so cool that they were able to just like kill one of the secondary characters like that just out of the blue. And then almost immediately after that, my response was like, I can't believe they did that to Culber, though, because that really does seem to be playing into, that trope, that TV trope of, bury your gays. And obviously, everyone has been very, very upset with that. And I think they knew that going into it because they've definitely been sort of like trying to get in front of it. And I guess in a sense, sort of like, I don't know if you'd say calm everyone's fears or justify their actions or whatever. But I mean, what was your thought on all that?
The instant Culber hit the ground, like my thought was, oh, so they're definitely doing like a straight up time travel episode. Because they're not going to leave him dead. I mean, like I didn't buy that he was going to stay dead. Period. And like I think I told you that in like a text or something, and you said like somebody said he's coming back, and I was like, yeah, of course. That doesn't surprise me at all. And then you mentioned something else like. There's a clue in Paul Stamets' book, Mycelium Running. I've read that book. I don't know what that is. I don't know what you're talking about. Maybe it's just that I read it like, I don't know, 5-8 years ago. I don't know. But I don't have a clue.
Okay. All right.
Maybe using the Mycelium network to transplant a spine from a parallel universe version of Culber. Oh, there's a mirror universe version of Culber. Just take that guy's spine.
They did say that we're not going to see the mirror universe version of Culber, because they didn't want to essentially tarnish the character. And, there is that whole thing. I mean, and that's sort of like what they've been saying, I guess spoilers for anyone, but I think it's very well documented at this point. Like, this isn't the end. He'll be back, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And... but there are a lot of people who are like, that doesn't matter. The fact that they did this in the first place, it's like, and it's almost like we're existing in a world right now. It's kind of like, Schrodinger's box or something like that, where it's like, or Schrodinger's cat, Schrodinger's Culber, where
Schrodinger's Roddenberry's box. What are you going with? I don't know.
Like, this is just the idea that like. As of right now, as of this moment when we're recording this, there hasn't been an episode 11, and he is dead, right? So, the fact that they're saying, like, well, we're going to bring him back, it kind of doesn't matter until it actually happens. And even when it does happen, does it matter? I mean, like, a lot of people are saying, like, just that act, just putting, the audience through that is, in a sense, traumatizing, and I can totally understand that too. It's and I don't know, like they painted themselves into this really weird corner where you're saying from the outset, like, this is a show where nobody's safe, and we're trying to make this a realistic war show, and people die, and you don't know who's going to die, but at the same time, you're also living in this world where even if you're not playing into sort of like the reasons behind the trope, right? There is this trope which exists, and you've got to sort of modify your media in order to, think about how the audience will react in the world that we're living in. I mean, it's all sort of about perception. I mean, that's what movies and TV are all about, right? So even if your intention is one thing, you've got to think about how it's going to play, like in the real world. And in the real world, people are going to see this as part of that trope and be upset. And I think that that's justifiable, I totally understand the criticism. And I mean, I don't know where they're going to go with it. And as someone who's been trying to kind of like avoid like actual like, knowledge of what comes next, the fact that they kind of undercut themselves by saying like, he's dead. And then, coming out, literally right after the show drops and saying, but we're bringing him back. Like, it's kind of dramatically not sound. Like, I almost wish they would have done kind of like a Star Trek 3 thing or something like that and do that in the episode. Like, say, like, well, he's coming back. I don't know how you would do that because obviously I don't know what's going to happen next. But yeah.
You just have Stamets standing over him with him like Culber in a bed, and Stamets pushing all kinds of crazy buttons and like plugging himself into the wall, and you go, okay, all right, he's on it. It's cool. He's on it. He's got a plan.
I mean, the fact that Culber can see so much. I mean, Stamets can see so much stuff. Like Stamets has the line like "the enemy is here" and all this stuff. Like you could very easily like have Stamets say some sort of weird, random, gibberish sounding line, which implies like this is not the end or whatever. You could do that, but I don't know. I guess you could also just go on After Trek and just flat out say it. So
yeah, you got options.
What do I know? It'll be interesting to see where it goes. And I mean, one of the things which they've been saying in interviews, like Aaron Harberts has been talking, and he's like, essentially there's going to be a week where people don't know what happens and people think that he's dead, and after that this show is going to exist in its entirety, from now until the end of time. So do we really want to compromise our entire story just to put people's minds at ease for 7 days? I mean, I don't know.
I'm not familiar. Like, I know I've heard of this term, the bury your gaze trope. I've heard of that. Aside from The Walking Dead, I don't know of instances where it's happened.
I mean, I don't know. I looked it up online, and they say it's mainly television, they listed a bunch of shows which I don't watch. But when I first heard about it, the thing that it was actually just very recently, it was with Atomic Blonde. Spoilers for Atomic Blonde, I guess. But the movie came out, and I was like, this movie's amazing. I love it. And then I started reading some of these reviews and some of these criticisms, and people were very upset with it. And then I've actually also heard of it in terms of like almost like the response media, like the stuff that people have made since then as a way of sort of like subverting it, which would be like Black Mirror and Sense8 are the two that come to mind, And I certainly saw a lot of stuff online. Is
like everybody's gay. I mean, like it would be hard to bury your gaze on that show. It would make it not a show.
I mean, the idea of it, for those people who don't know, like basically the trope is, if you have a gay character on the show or a gay couple on the show, they're not allowed to have a happy ending. Like they'll be killed. Yeah. Or if it's a gay couple, one of them will be killed. Usually, because, I mean, I guess you could kind of liken it to the sort of like morality of like 80s horror movies or something like that, where it's like, oh, well, these people are sexually promiscuous, so they don't deserve to live. Or, there's kind of like these extensions of it where it's like, as I was reading, where it's like, oh, the gay character sacrifices themselves so that the straight characters can live, like that kind of thing.
Yeah,
and
there's also like the idea that to reinforce that gay people are treated unfairly, like they die in order to indicate like, look, unfair things happen to these people. It's messed up, guys. Get upset about this. And
right.
It's not wrong. It's just it's a particular way of looking at the problem.
Yeah. And it's like, are any of those things going on here? Like, I mean, I honestly think that the creators of this show are, acutely aware of this trope, and they're not trying to play into it. I mean, not that I don't think that anyone necessarily is consciously saying like, let's do this. It's just something that people do because of their messed up philosophy, right? Yeah. But I think that they're like, no, we're trying to do something else, and we're going to end up killing this character, and that's kind of like an unfortunate like side effect or coincidence. That coincidence isn't the right word.
I think that it's an unfortunate circumstance where, like, for dramatic purposes, in order to do what you want to do, you have to do something that you don't want to do. And like most stories that have like a really like grand crescendo, like operatic everything, like the good guys win and the bad guys lose, and it's amazing, and everyone's cheering in the streets, and people are throwing over cop cars, but not out of anger, just because it's like, look, it's upside down, look at that, isn't it amazing? Like, you want to get that like excitement, you have to take the audience to a really sad and dark place somewhere around like 2/3 of the way through. And one way that really works for doing that is like somebody invariably likable dies. It's a thing that happens all the time. Like Obi-Wan, Phil Coulson, like beloved characters get killed. Like the dog in a movie with a dog, for example. Like it's a thing that you do. Like his death, I think, is very clearly like the dark point. Like we're in the dark part of the story now. This is really bad. For example, Culber's dead. See, really bad, right? That's really sad. It's a bad time. It's a bad situation. They're in a bad place. Things are bad. So like the idea is like, in order to get back to good and happy and bright, they have to go to the really dark, sad, and awful place. And like Culber's death and what I assume to be his resurrection by some means is part of like building a really big, like much more significant love story between these two characters than, generally speaking, Star Trek is comfortable with. So the idea that like not only are they trying to build an epic romance, they're making an epic romance between two guys. I think that's kind of cool. So when I see his death, I think, okay, that to me, unfortunately, does telegraph his eventual resurrection, which isn't great because you don't want to know everything that's going to happen. But like on the other hand, I'm like, oh well, they're committing to this thing. They're committing to these two guys. They're not like side characters. They're going to be much more significant. That's cool. Yeah,
and I guess, and like this is the thing, which like I don't think that I would have thought. And maybe over time, because I found out, like literally right after the episode. But like, I don't think I would have thought that he was coming back. And there was a lot of fear. Like I remember like reading online, there were a lot of people who were like, God, I hope they don't kill Stamets. I can't. They better not kill Stamets. They better not play into this trope. And
they didn't. Thank goodness.
Yeah, and like I remember like reading that and thinking like, of course they're not going to do that. They know better than to do that. And as soon as I saw them kill Culber, I was like, oh my, I cannot believe they did that. Like I literally cannot believe they did that. And that reaction that I had obviously is very similar to the reaction that everyone else had. I mean, my wife, who's completely unaware of this trope, had the same exact reaction sitting next to me on the couch and, talking about it with friends and everything online, everyone had that reaction. And, there is definitely something to be said for, like, you shouldn't have to watch After Trek to know, what's going on and everything. And the fact that people are upset about it, I think, is completely justifiable and reasonable, even if they do know what's coming next. It's a traumatic thing to see, for sure. And
I suppose it's possible that my positive reaction to it is primarily based in, like, not generally being 100% excited about the show. Like, I for the most part watch it like, okay, all right, yeah, that's not bad. Like, it's not bad. Like, there's no question about that. It's definitely not a bad show, and I'm going to keep watching it until the end. I'm committed. Like, I don't lament watching it. It's just like I'm not thrilled. I'm not like, oh, there's a new discovery, let's watch that. Oh my god, can you believe it? Oh, look at that ship. I don't do that. Like, I just kind of go like, all right. Let's see where it goes. I'm hoping it goes somewhere really cool. And I see that, and I think, like, oh, they're trying to go somewhere really cool.
Yeah, I mean, and that maybe that says something about the show for most people. I mean, for me, for sure, whatever. The fact that people are so upset about it, like, I don't remember this outrage over Atomic Blonde, because I remember people basically just coming out and being like, "Screw that movie," that movie's dead to me. And here people are like really, really upset because I think they've come to love these characters so much. And now, the rug has just been pulled out from underneath them. And I can totally understand that. And I have to say that I would have, like, I've now that I know that he's coming back, right? I'm kind of like, okay, well, let's see how this works. And I can look at it, much more rationally and sort of like appreciate it for what it is in the episode and everything like that, outside of, where it fits in the larger landscape of media. But, like, if they had just killed him and I thought that he was dead for real, I mean, I would be upset too. I really would. I would just be like, how could they do that? And even now I'm kind of like, boy, it really took a lot of guts for them to do that, and I don't really know if it was the right choice. I mean, and maybe we'll see at the end, but, like, oh boy, that was, like Ira Stephen Bear says, it's nothing if not bold. So I guess we'll just have to see what happens next.
I'm hoping that that Stamets' development into fungus god, like, leads to some interesting places. And if like my initial assumption that time travel would be involved in Culber's resurrection is wrong, and I hope so. And in fact, it is Stamets who brings his true love back from death, then I hope he does so in as crazy, trippy a way as possible. I would like there to be an episode where he just goes like, hold on, and just like his eyes go white and he just hangs out in the mycelium network and explores strange like nether space inside of a network that is conscious and has been alive for trillions of years, perhaps since before the origin of the universe, and he requests from the oldest intelligence in existence assistance in bringing his one true love back to life, and he gets it, and it looks like Gene Roddenberry.
There you go. This sounds like an Alan Moore comic.
It does, doesn't it? Because
yes.
that kind of happened in an Alan Moore comic.
Which one? All of them? Oh, okay.
Swamp Thing.
All right.
A guy who was part plant. Yeah, think about it.
Yeah, there was a lot of like pulling random fungus off of Swamp Thing and having other people eat it and to share like experiences. And that was a weird comic. Anyway,
well, no, it was a tuber. It wasn't fungus. He didn't actually do a lot with fungus. I think that I don't think Alan Moore knew much about fungus at the time.
Okay, all right. Well, what can you do?
Yeah.
All right. Well, I guess we should pretty much wrap this up, right? Be sure to check out our Discovery coverage throughout the week. A lot of people are talking. It was crazy. And like everyone, we're like the last people to record, and we're recording on Tuesday morning. Like I go onto our planning website and I see like all of the files, like everyone decided to record on Monday night. And I was recording something else, but I was just looking at it. I'm like, whoa, like there was literally like a couple hours there where like the entire network was talking about this episode of Discovery, and it kind of
the whole mycelium network was talking about this episode. It was crazy.
Yeah. And I looked at all those files, and I'm like, at first I was like, oh, that's so cool that everyone was doing that. And then I looked at all those files again, and I'm like, I'm going to have to sort through these and get them all posted in time. All right, well, we've got our work cut out for us. So,
among chanterelles, the hashtag Justice for Culber was trending.
Yeah, there you go. I have no idea what you just said, but yeah, there you go.
It was a weird fungus joke.
Okay, all right, cool. If you're into fungus, by the way, check out the new Paul Thomas Anderson movie, Phantom Thread. Hey.
I'm not that into it.
Okay. Well, be sure to check out our Discovery coverage throughout the week. Live from the Edge airs on Mondays at 9 p.m. Eastern with Bruce and Brandy, and will be released as a podcast on Tuesday mornings. Then our commentary show, Tracks from the Edge, will be up on Wednesdays. And we will discuss your feedback on Postcards from the Edge on Thursday with Amy Nelson. And, of course, you can catch full analysis on the Edge main show with Brandon Shea Matala on Fridays. And then to wrap up the week, you can join us for Notes from the Edge on Saturday with our own Chris Jones for links between Discovery and the broader franchise. And, oh, my God, I cannot wait to hear this week's episode, because the whole time I'm, watching it, I'm just like, and we didn't even talk about that. We didn't even talk about the Defiant thing. And it was like Inception references. Like, is this an Enterprise reference, or is it it's a reference to something on Enterprise, which was a reference to something on the original series. And last night I went back and I watched the Tholian Web and In a Mirror Darkly, and it was really cool. And there are definitely, because they're like, we have to figure out what happened, and then you start looking at it and you're like, but then, okay, so someone's going to have to like set off some sort of bomb. I wonder if the Tholians are going to be involved. But then also, like, there's the time shift. So since they're going from
it's been a big chunk of time since In a Mirror Darkly. It's been a big chunk of time.
Well, Defiant went backwards 100 years, right? So if they're going to the other universe, are they get? And then I got really excited. I'm like, are we going to end up in Next Gen era Prime universe? Are we going to see like the Enterprise D? Like, could that happen? That could happen. That could very easily happen. That would not be a stretch. That would be less of a stretch than them ending up in, the present day, Prime universe.
Yeah, there is sort of an issue, though, because Enterprise is post-First Contact. So there are minor differences to the timeline. So they could get away with having a few changes here and there.
That's an interesting thought. And, like, which sort of time... This is too much to get into in our recap.
Yeah, rabbit holes.
Yeah.
Coming this fall to... What, Trek FM?
CBS All Access, right? No, Trek FM. Trek FM. That's what we're doing. And whatever. It doesn't matter.
Rabbit holes.
So yes. Anyway, and then on After Trek, when our Aaron Harberts is like, read Paul Stamets's Mycelium Running. All the answers are there.
No, they're not.
Well, whatever, so now it's, and I'm, and I saw like Chris like tweeting about the book. He's like, look, it's the #1 mushroom science book on Amazon.com.
Yeah.
It literally was listed as that on Amazon.com.
The dude gave an amazing TED Talk, and I was like, that guy's awesome. I'm going to read that book. And I read that book, and I was like, this is legitimately a good book. It doesn't have any answers to how you can resurrect somebody with a snapped spine. It doesn't have that information. I'm hoping that we're not getting a lot of people looking for that information there, because unfortunately it does not. This book about fungus does not contain the cure to broken spine.
Okay, but I do believe, like, the fact that he said that, I've got to think that, and we know how much, Paul Stamets's work has influenced, the tech on Discovery. Like, I've got to think that when they were bringing him back, whatever the science is behind it is somehow based on the science in mycelium running, because they flat out said that. So it may not be an obvious thing, but it may be a weird, Star Trek-ified version of it. But
it's definitely going to be a Star Trek-ified version of it, because what they're going to do is they're going to, if it's in fact true that mycelium running has some sort of clue as to how they're going to bring him back, then what they're going to do is they're going to use the mycelium network that's in subspace to do some sort of transplantation or replacement, or actually using the mycelium network to rebuild the body and mind using like the data that the mycelium network has stored, because the mycelium network spread throughout all time and space. So it probably has data from previous incarnations of people, and probably even has information about what Stamets is going to be doing 2 weeks from now. It probably knows that Tilly is a captain in another universe. So yeah, of course, the answer is the mycelium network knows everything, is everywhere. Problem solved.
There you go. Well, I'm hoping that Chris will be talking about this on Notes from the Edge, but obviously, even if he doesn't get a chance to read that book before then, like before tomorrow, then at the very least, I'm sure we'll have a lot of info about mirror universes and all that good stuff. So I'm definitely looking forward to this week's Notes on the Edge. And you can find all of these shows in our main feed for the Edge and in the Trek FM master feed. We'd love to hear your thoughts on Discovery, and the best place to do that is in the Babel Conference. And boy, do people have a lot of thoughts on this episode. Like, one of my favorite things to do is just go on the Babel Conference and look at how many comments Amy is getting for postcards from the Edge. And last I looked, she had like 500 comments on this episode alone. So that's insane. But yeah, head on over to the Babel Conference, which is our listeners group on Facebook, and Amy Nelson will collect all of your feedback for postcards from the Edge, and she'll read some of them on the air. You can also find us on Twitter at TrekFM, or you can send us an email using the contact form on our website at trek.fm/contact. Just choose to send to a show and choose the Edge. We'd like to thank our associate producers for today's show: Norman C. Lau, Tony Robinson, Thomas Puleo, Lisa Slack, Shoaib Mirza, Richard Rutledge, and James Muldrow. Thank you very much, guys. If you'd like to help us keep all of our shows going and even become an associate producer yourself, visit patreon.com/trekfm for all the details. All right. Well, it's been a lot of fun talking about Despite Yourself. And hey, we will be back next week to discuss Episode 11 of Star Trek Discovery right here on Tracks from the Edge.